Hi, I am going to be talking about chapter 2 of Big Java Early Objects. This is the starting of object and classes. So we will be talking about this. I broke this down to a smaller portions. So we're going to have each section separately. And I explain some of the things as we go along so we can be on the same page. So the goal of this one is to some stuff in here is exactly the same as the C++. So at this time, the requirement for this class is to pass CS2. Hopefully in the future that's going to change, but that's what it is right now. So some of the things that we have in C++, introduction to programming, I'm not going to go through it. I'm expecting that you already know it. If you don't, you can go over it by yourself. So we can spend more time on the current topic on this one. So some of these things, I'm just going to quickly go over it, or I just mentioned that you're going to go read yourself if you don't know about it. A lot of it is going to be close to C++. So we're going to spend some time on understanding classes and objects. We're going to talk about the methods, which is the same thing as functions in C++. We call it method over here. We're going to talk about the arguments and return value. You already know that through the functions in C++. We're going to go over them quickly. We're going to talk about the API documentation, how to look up things, to find things. We're going to talk about the test programs. How do we test our classes? So we're going to create our track classes. We're going to create objects of those classes, and then we're going to test them to be sure it's working. We're going to talk about the difference between the objects and object reference. And of course, we're going to do some simple graphics at the end of this chapter. So quite a few things that we need to go over. So when we're talking about the objects, we're going to talk about this, and we're going to write our own classes later on in the class. But here we just want to know how to use them. So when we're talking about the objects or the things that they have some functionalities. So in real life, we see an object, we can touch it, we can feel it, and we understand what they're supposed to do. So when we build it inside the program, we call them objects. We kind of simulate what's going to be in outside world, and we bring it in the program. So what I want to mention here is, as if I say car or I say water heater, that concept is not a reality. I cannot drive car. I have to have an object of that, and then I can use it. I have to have the actual water heater before I use it. I have to have the actual car before I use it. So we're going to talk about the difference between object and class as we go forward, and those are the distinctions we're going to have. So the behavior, and I call them functionalities or actions, are what we want from the object. What does it do? So when I sit in my car and I shift to drive, of course, I have to start the engine first, then it's going to go forward. That's the behavior of the car. You start, you move forward, you move backward, you stop with the brake. So those are the behavior that the car can do. Same thing goes with the water heater. We are expecting the water heater going to create some hot water for us. We expect a furnace to give us some hot air. So we are going to be talking about how we're going to use this in our programs. So first we're going to learn how to use it. We learn how to build it later. So if I have an object, so remember, object is the existence of a class. So class does not exist, just like a blueprint of a house, but the object does exist. So I have to have an object before I use it. Now, I can have a method or functions inside that object that can execute something. So I push the gas in my car, it's going to move. I push the brake, it's going to stop. So that's the functionality. That's what we're talking about. So we're going to have those methods. This, how does it work, is not my concern when I'm using it. So when I push my handle in drive and my car goes forward, I don't even know how does the transmission works. When I push a start and my engine is working, I don't know how the engine works. So the detail of it is not my concern. My concern is how do I interact with those things, with those functionalities that I have in my car. So I don't know if they are well defined. So if I buy or something from somewhere that they may or may not have done it correctly. So we see sometimes the car manufacturing send us a defect. So I'm expecting that my airbag opens up when something happens, and then the callback say, you know what, the implementation of that is not done correctly. So even though you have an accident, your airbag doesn't open. Or even if you don't have an accident, the airbag opens by itself. So I don't know how it is, and I don't know if it's done correctly. So that is basically called black box theory. I don't know what's inside the box, I just know how to use it. Some of the things that you're going to be saying, and I'm hoping that you guys are going to be reading your book as much as you're listening to the lecture, because I'm not covering every single thing in your book. And I think this book is a very good book to learn this stuff. So we have a print ln, and we have a print that belongs to system.out. So the way that we know how to use the object, we are going to have a dot operator that's going to be used. So when we call this print ln, we're going to have a dot operator over here. We don't know how is it written. I basically don't care how is it written. I just want to know how to use it. So if I use this print ln, it's going to print something into the screen, and ln means going to give me a new line. So it's going to print and give me a new line. That's all I need to know. And of course, I need to know what's going to go into it, and what's coming out of it is, we're going to talk more about it. So it does work. So we're going to be looking at this kind of a picture a lot more in this class. So we're going to have a class, or we're going to talk about a blueprint. And then from that blueprint, we're going to create an object. So when we create an object, it's going to have some, first of all, it's going to have a name for it. And then we're going to have some data, and then we're going to have some methods. So that is how the objects are created. And we're going to learn later on in the class how to create our own classes. Right now, we're just going to use the classes that's available. Out of those classes, we're going to create objects, and then we're going to use the objects. So it talks about, let's say, water heater. When I say I have a water heater, the functionality of this water heater is going to be giving me hot water when I need it. So take a shower, wash my face, I need hot water. But the behind the scene, if it's going to be using gas or it's going to be using solar, I don't care. When I need the hot water, I just need the hot water. Maybe I need it when I want to build it. That's going to be something that we're going to be talking about in the future. But if somebody comes to my home and wants the hot water, then they're not going to ask if my water heater is gas, electric, or solar. They just expect that if they use the red knob, they're going to get hot water. So that's what we're talking about, that the implementation and what's happening and how we're going to get it How we're going to get it is not important. Is we're going to be able to get it is important to us. So I put some of the things in here that we're going to see this again and again. So when we're talking about the classes, we're talking about the template of what we want. So we're going to sit down, think about it when we create our own classes. And then we're going to build objects based on these things. So we're going to have the name of the class. We're going to have what kind of a data we're going to have. And then we're going to have the methods or behaviors over here. So example, so a class describes a set of objects with the same behavior. So when they have the same behavior, we're going to group them to the same class. So let's talk about car. So when we're talking about a car, we kind of know what the car is, but we don't know exactly what physical car is. So we're going to have some data for this car. What kind of a data do you think we need for a car? So I have a car, you have a car, your friend has a car, somebody else has a car, Uber has a car, Uber driver has a car. So what data do we have for this car? You might want to jot down something. So when we're going through these lecture videos, I want you to have a piece of paper or something that you write on it in your computer, another page, so you can write down to my experience. When you interact, you're going to learn a lot more. Excuse me. So what kind of a data do we have for car? We're going to have year and model, make and model. What year is it? What color is it? How many doors does it have? We're going to have the registered owner of this one. We have license plate, we have BIN, and those are the data that I need for the car. And of course, it's a lot more than that. I'm just putting some examples. Now, we're going to have some method or behavior. What can we do? So we can register this car. Register is going to do what? It's going to change the name of the owner to a new owner. We can paint the car. We can either paint it to the same color or we can paint it to a different color. When we talk about our loading function, we can change the license plate. We're going to request to get a special license plate for my car. Another example is like a townhouse. So it's a community of the houses. They may be gated or not gated, but when you go there, all the houses look very similar to each other. So these townhouses, what do they have? What data do they have? What do you think that we need for the house? What data do we have? So again, we can share this, that they're going to have owner. So somewhere county is keeping track of who's the owner of this property. It has the address, it has number of rooms, number of floors, and bunch of other data that we can have in a house. And then the methods, it can change the owner. So somebody sell it to somebody else. We can again paint it. Let's say I want to paint the whole house, or I want to paint just the kitchen or one bedroom. We can repair it. So let's say I want to repair my faucet, then that's going to be a behavior that we can do with the house. So if you have any questions, write it down, and then you can either post it in the DQ or ask me directly so we can go over it. So again, when we're talking about the class, they all have the same behavior. So in this case, we're talking about the, let me get this implementation so we can play with that a little bit. So I'm going to get this one here. So we're talking about the string object. String object that's going to have a bunch of characters in there. So it can be a string of something. So when we're talking about a string of something, and we're talking about bunch of character, that is the data that we are saving in an object of a string. Remember, the string itself is a class. And then we're going to build an object of this string. We're going to give it a name, and then it's going to contain this data. Now we're going to have, so remember, we have a system.out, and then we have the print stream. So this print stream has this system.out, and then we have println and print in there. That's going to be printing things. These are my methods, belongs to system.out. So in this case, it's talking about the window. So when we say window, it has a certain behavior. So the behavior can be, I can see the other side. It's protecting my house for wind and some sun. The sun can go through, but hopefully it's going to block some harmful things that is in the sun. So let's say it's going to block certain X-rays or certain things that's coming through the sun. So it's going to block it. And that's the behavior of window. So how big is it? Where is it? And those are the data that we're going to collect for each object of a window. So in this house, one might have 20 windows, and each one of them is one object of a class window. So when we're talking about different classes, that means they have different responsibility. They are doing different things. So string, let me put this one in again. So the string knows about the letters and that it contains. It has those letters inside of it, but the string doesn't know anything about how to print stuff. It doesn't have that as a method. So that's what the behavior is for string. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some things called self check. And what I'm going to do starting now, what we're going to do is we're going to wait on this for about a minute, think about it, put something down, and then we're going to see the answers coming up. I'm giving it a minute. You need more time, just pause the video. If you need less time, then just fast forward to the next one. First, I show you all the questions, and then we go and look at the answers. So I'm going to set 1 minute for this. So it says objects are grouped into classes according to their behavior. Would a window object and a water heater object belong to the same class or to different classes? And if you say yes or no, you want to explain why. Okay, we're getting close to 1 minute. So you need more time, just pause it and then you can start it whenever you're ready. Next question is, some light bulbs use a glowing filament, others use a fluorescent gas. If you consider a light bulb a Java object with an illuminate method, would you need to know which kind of bulb it is? So I'm going to start this again. Think about it. Write it down somewhere. I'm going to stop this a little earlier. I'm going to put it at the 30-second. I think you either have the answer or you don't. So we can move on. Again, if you need more time, just push pause on the video. Next question is, what actually happens when you try to call the following? So I have a string over here, hello world. I'm calling a dot println. Remember, we're going to call the method or function with the dot operator, and then we're going to do the system dot out. So think about this. I'm giving 1 minute on this one. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here.